Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church, Stony Stratford, and we're continuing our series of short talks in the Gospel of Luke. And today we come to Luke chapter 7, verses 31 to 35. Jesus has pointed out that there were only two reactions to his teaching, and that was to accept it or reject it. Rather interestingly, the tax collectors, those that were considered sinners by the religious elite, they had accepted Jesus' teaching. Many of them had come and repented. They knew they needed God and they needed God's forgiveness. But the religious elite, the Pharisees and teachers of the law, had rather depended on their good works rather than the fact that they needed to repent. It does make a point, doesn't it? It's possible to draw the wrong conclusion. I was a big advocate of Mad magazine in my 20s, and I remember reading this, made me laugh, but then it made a good point as well, which good satire does. Have you ever heard about the chain smoker who read so much about the bad effects of smoking, he gave up reading? Makes the point, doesn't it? It's possible to have all the facts and still to draw the wrong reaction. And Jesus points this out. And he makes this point. Verse 31. To what then can I compare the people of this generation? What are they like? They are like children sitting in the marketplace and calling out to each other. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not cry. See the point that Jesus is making? He's pointing out that those who reject him are like petulant children. They can't make up their mind which game they want to play. One lot over there sort of wants to play weddings, and the others won't join in. The others want to play funerals, and neither side will join in with the other. It's making the point, isn't it, that they don't react. It's not as even if they do anything other than to criticize each other's choices. And that was very much the point Jesus is making about those religious people who did not see the need for his message or the need to repent. In fact, all they really did was find fault. Getting back to John the Baptist, whose disciples had just departed, Jesus says this, verse 33. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you said he has a demon. John was, really sort of the mould of the prophet Elijah, dressed very much the same way from what we can see of the descriptions of both of them in the Bible. He was a rugged man. He wasn't given to a turn of a pretty phrase, and Jesus made that very clear about his teaching. He did not yield. And so the Pharisees looked at him and said, well, he's demon-possessed. But how did they react to Jesus? Verse 34. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, he is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Jesus was very much more the sociable type, mixing with people as well as teaching them. But they go to the other extreme. He's a glutton. One is demon-possessed. One is to be dismissed because he is a glutton. It makes Jesus sound like a party animal, doesn't it? Not respectful at all. But Jesus concludes in this way, verse 35. But wisdom is proved right by all her children. What's he actually saying there? Well, I think he's saying this. Wisdom is measured by what it produces. So what are we to take from this? Because obviously Jesus is saying the right thing would have been to listen to John and to listen to him. Well, the Bible has a lot to say about wisdom. In Proverbs, a book full of wisdom, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge or wisdom, depending on which version you're reading from. Perhaps the most interesting sort of summing up of wisdom is from the book of Job. It happens literally sort of almost halfway through the book. I don't know if you remember the story of Job. Job is befallen by some terrible events. His friends turn up. They do the right thing for a bit. They sit around with him, quietly just mourning with him. And then they've all got an opinion on why he's suffering. And a lot of stuff is said, but it's all said from man's point of view. And then we get to chapter 28. And this is a chapter all about wisdom. Where can it be found? And when I've read the book, it seems to be written by the author. It's kind of like a little sort of interlude where he says, well, oh, my word, this theological discussion, this talk about wisdom, it's going nowhere. We need a breath of fresh air. So he muses on wisdom. And he actually sort of goes to God's critique of wisdom. And verse 27 of Job 28 says this: Then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it. And he said to man, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding. Do we want to be wise in this world? Well, that's not the same as worldly wisdom. But it is about deciding where we stand when it comes to Jesus. Are we going to put ourselves in with the Pharisees? We don't need him. Our good deeds will be enough. Looking after our family, loving our wives and children, that will be enough for it. Well, it'd be wonderful if it was, wouldn't it, in a way? It would suit us down to the ground, but that would be the problem, because our standards aren't God's standards. Or are we going to be those who are recognised as having a wisdom because we realise that we cannot depend on ourselves? We can't get right with God through our own doing. If that's the case, are we going to come to Jesus and accept his offer of forgiveness? Thank you so much for listening.